Manjushri Kumara Bhutaya. Today I will explain a very simple matter, or what might appear to be a very simple matter, which is the difference between script and language. Some might feel that it is very easy to distinguish between the two, but this very much depends on which language we are most familiar with. I have noticed that some East Asian students tend to identify language and script very strongly, and this might be rather understandable when we think of how Chinese language works. In English too, to some extent, because of the very remarkable variety in pronunciation, we might think that our pronunciation of English words is meant to reproduce in speech the way something is written. Thus, the written form in some sense is more perfect, and we are just trying to reproduce it through speech. In fact, it is rather the other way around, very clearly so in Sanskrit and other Indic languages, which means that the primary element of language is sound, is not something visible, is not the representation of sounds through written letters. And the written letters are understood as being precisely that. They are meant to represent in a visible format the sounds of the language, which are therefore primary. This is even stated explicitly, for example, by Vasubandhu, who explains that the written letters were devised for the purpose of representing in writing what is expressed as sounds during actual speech acts. So in the case of Sanskrit, Prakrit, other Indic languages, very often there is no specific script exclusively associated with the language. So we may decide to write Sanskrit in a variety of scripts, and indeed Sanskrit texts have been transmitted through literally hundreds of different scripts. Here I offer an example of 5 different scripts, and I've written the letters A, I, U, U. You can see these are easily recognizable in Roman script, and this is in Devanāgarī. Devanāgarī has become a very popular Sanskrit script in South Asia, and this has something to do with the fact that Devanāgarī is the script used for Hindi as well. And since Hindi is the national language of Hindi, this made the Devanāgarī printing press readily available throughout India relatively early on. So this might be one reason why Devanāgarī now is a very prominent script to represent Sanskrit. Another important script is Siddhamatraka, and this became also very popular in East Asia. Another very popular, somewhat ornamental script is Ranjana. There's actually more than one variety of Ranjana. Some varieties are from the Kathmandu Valley and used by the Newar, and other varieties used in Tibet. So it should be clear that out of these 5 scripts, none of these are Sanskrit script. Such thing doesn't exist. In fact, for the very same reason, all of them are Sanskrit scripts. There is no such thing as the Sanskrit script. Sanskrit can be represented in different ways through different written conventions, but the sounds of the language have been so well regularized that I think just a few hundred years ago, if you had a Sanskrit scholar from North India and a Sanskrit scholar from South India, if they met each other and pronounced the same Sanskrit verse, they would very clearly understand that they are in fact pronouncing the exact same thing. On the other hand, if I try to write down that verse, they might be using completely different scripts. And so the meeting point, the regularized feature in the transmission of the language is indeed the sound. You can see that this situation is, in my understanding at least, almost the opposite than how it works for a language like Chinese. And I think this might be one reason why some East Asian students tend to have a difficulty in understanding that the script is not the language for many other languages, and especially it is not the case in Sanskrit.